Man, it's intense. Like you describe this as a collapsing of your old life, and now you have this new nomadic life. If I think about my own life, I mean, I wouldn't describe it as a collapsing, but it definitely is radically different. Before COVID, I had no children. Now I have two. My daughter saw her first masked person in a grocery store the other day, and she just, kids don't have any politeness to them necessarily. She's, what's that? Like, and I was like, don't worry about it. Just don't say stuff like that to people. Like, let's move on. But I clearly moved to the other side of the country, had to get out of California. I have the best place I've ever had before that has room for me to have an office and for two kids to live in. I definitely don't.
Western Florida is magic, brother.
It seems
Western
that way.
Florida. I mean, like Tampa isn't necessarily my favorite part, but it's still part. Like it's the when you go, it's still part of like it. It is Tampa and then St. Pete are the most culturally influenced centers on this whole stretch. Like I tend to be a little bit more. I felt more at home in Venice, Florida. But there is something there, like from the mounds, from the climate. Like you look at the work of what is it, Dr. Longo. He's pointing to something. Like I don't necessarily like not everything hits for me, but he's on to something, and I experienced it here. Like you were called. My life is different because my boys are stepping into independence now. Right. So like I'm able to do something which like
do you still have a good relationship with them?
Yes. Okay. Oh my goodness. That's yes.
Obviously very important.
That's been probably the most stable thing. And it's also been in many ways, it's been the from my internal. So my internal sort of like where I've grown, like that has been where the most amount of discomfort has been. Is as it relates to that role and like really questioning. And that's really inspired within me, like the importance of like role models, fathers, all of that whole thing about community. And, that is a big part of where we're going, because like, I mean, everyone knows this, like the modus operandi of, the adversary is divide and conquer, which implies like, well, then the opposite of that is community. Children that were born in COVID, during COVID, like I have such clarity, I think, of what that generation is being born into, the potentiality, like that generation has more potential of like on the weirdest out there way of like changing what life is like on this realm, completely different than anything which we've been told. But then I also have a great deal of sympathy of what's happened for all of those children and for the parents who are like what it takes, like what you are raising your children in is a very different environment than what I raised my children in.
Right. And my hope, I think what COVID did for me and my wife is we're just like, okay, the party is over. We grew up in Missouri. We had this 13-year party in San Diego. It's been great, but now we need to actually give ourselves what we want ultimately, which is a family in a house that's stable. And we really just had to move the pieces to where we wanted them. And now we just want to hold on. Now we got the house, we got the kids. We really just want to keep everybody safe and happy and raise them here and weather the storm that, all kinds of chaos is probably going to come. What sucks on a professional level is I think of COVID as, like you mentioned, that people turn to you for advice in this new situation that popped up. They're like, well, I wonder what Michael Wann thinks because he's been insightful on other situations. And obviously I experienced that through the guests I would have, and people would look at the show and other shows like it for guidance. The problem I find is that I'm financially vested in the audience who supports me and gives me what I want and now allows my kids to have a future. But every new narrative that pops up, I lose some people because some people get captured by it. Ukraine, We talked about Ukraine with guests from an alternative perspective. And hey, look at the deeper history here and look at why Russia did what they did and how the globalists have been encircling them and broke their promises first, even though it wasn't as obvious as feet on the ground, boots on the ground moving. It's still like, it's not just as black and white as the news presents it. Well, just saying that caused some people to drop off of Plus, a lot of angry emails, bad reviews. People who've liked the show for 10 years, 1 star now because of a single event and the perception of it. It's kind of, I don't care about reviews, but this hurts with the algorithms. Whatever. But then also the new one is Ukraine and even more, Israel, and even more emotionally charged situation that people are even more vested in. I didn't know people were vested in Ukraine until they were told to be. And now we try to take an alternative tack there, and a lot more people are angry. So my role is to stay committed to the alternative narratives, to parsing through what we're being presented and finding people who have good alternative takes. And the audience is supposed to be along for that ride, but I don't know. It's like they're catching strays. Like it's like they're being fired at, and they've dodged the first 4 or 5 bullets and they get hit by the 6th one. And now people who are okay with digesting alternative narratives about coronavirus, about 9/11, about everything, they aren't okay with this new thing. And that's becoming a problem for me. Now, there is no other course but to stay committed to the alternative narratives. That's what the show is. There is no other course. But I do, every time I have a guest who's going to digest a new cultural situation or event from an alternative perspective, I lose some members, and members are money. And so it's difficult. Am I watching a collapse? I hope not. A slow motion collapse? No, I don't think so. But it's just a reality. And so I'm glad that I'm at least in a stable place where I know what my bills are, where I know what I need. And I'm just going to keep chugging along because I feel like that's my role, is to present these alternative narratives, even though it's getting harder to do from multiple perspectives. I didn't think the audience would leave me. I thought I'd get shut off, at the financial faucet or something like that, which obviously can still happen. But I think I positioned myself as best as I could with the 2 kids and the wife that is on my page, and we're here and we're just trying to stick it out. But that's how I think about my life. Obviously, we're at different points in our timelines, different ages. But that's how I'm trying to navigate, just doing what I've always done. But people are more fickle, I think. Like, they just don't like to process real-time events with the same aggressive alternative nature that they will process old events. It's just weird. It's like that whole joke about too soon. Yes, for some people, it's too soon to process the alternative narrative of something in real time.
So, all right. So I appreciate that. You know what? I really enjoy this. Happens, I think, almost every time we have these conversations, is it becomes personal like this. And I greatly value this exchange which we're having.
Can you believe it, people? A video clip and a peek into how that sweet THC sausage is made. For some people, I'm sure it's nice to put a face to the name, so I started making clips that are a little more YouTube friendly than the full show tends to be. Get the full show on any podcasting platform. I prefer to keep it audio only, so we have a more decentralized distribution for a controversial show, and also so I can edit out the ums and ahs and barking dogs and all the things that happen when a person records in their home environment. And then if you really like the show, you can sign up for THC Plus, and instead of 1-hour interviews, you get the full 2-hour interview for just $8. I think that's a better deal, more of a win-win than asking you to support the show by booking a therapy session or buying generic Viagra. It's getting weird out there, folks. So just go to the highersidechats.com or click the link at the top of any set of show notes, and all your wildest dreams will come true. All right? All right. The Higherside Chat Show. Greg Carwood,